Hey guys, so as I've been doing the past couple of months, and that you guys seem to be enjoying, is sharing my monthly wrap-up and statistics. So this is a kind of look back at the things that I've read in the past month on a more like analytical basis, not necessarily looking at the specific books, but looking at the overall month as a whole, the month of reading that I had. Now, normally I would do also weekly wrap-ups, and I have been doing those, but this week I decided just to go ahead and skip that. I don't know if anybody actually notices when I decide to skip them, but I didn't really read too much this past week, didn't finish too much this past week at least, and thought I would just go ahead and wait until next week to do the weekly wrap-up and then just post this right now so you guys can see the statistical side of things from last month. So we'll go ahead and get into it, kind of have a list of some of these things I'm going to be talking about right here, and then kind of a thing right here that tells me what the month before was like so I can kind of compare the two. So the month before last, February, the month of February, I read 18 books, and in this past month, in March, I read 16, so a little bit less. I did have a bit of a rough month earlier this month, which you'll know if you follow the vlog. And the vlog is a little bit behind right now, kind of as a result of that, but it's going to be caught up very, very soon. But I was having a little bit of a rough time at the beginning of the month, but now I'm back on track for the most part, or at least feel like I am. So I feel like I could have gotten to more in March if things had gone a little bit more smoothly, but as it is, it's totally fine. 16 is still a pretty decent amount. I think that brings my total, at the end of the month at least, my total was like 49 or something like that. It's definitely gone up since then. I've read a couple books since the end of the month. So my total is now like over 50, I think, but for the whole year. But I'll get to that in my weekly wrap up for next week. Getting into some of those numbers from those 16 books that I read. First let's look at the 16 books that I read. The 16 books that I read were Two Like the Lightning and Seven Surrenders, an audiobook called Forging Divinity, plus the audiobooks for Small Favor, Turncoat, Changes, and Ghost Story, which are all by Jim Butcher as part of the Dresden Files. So I listened to 4 books from that series, and I listened to 4 books from another series, all of the 4 books that are in that series, which is Feed, Deadline, Blackout, and Feedback, all by Myra Grant, all part of the Newsflash trilogy, plus one extra that she kind of wrote as a spin-off, but it like kind of takes place at the same time as the first book in the trilogy. So I read all 4 of those. I've read Stars Are Legion by Cameron Hurley. I read New York 2140 by Kim Stanley Robinson, The Collapsing Empire by John Scalzi, Norse Mythology by Neil Gaiman, and Star's End by Cassandra Rose Clark. So those are the 16 books that I read. And of those 16, getting into some of the numbers, 8 of them were from female authors and 8 of them were from male authors. So I can say that's pretty balanced, right down the middle. Definitely more down the middle than it's been in any other months. For example, last month in February when I read 18 books, 15 of them were male and 3 of them were female. So definitely kind of balancing myself out there a little bit more. For the protagonists' genders, 7 of them were male, 5 were female, and 4 of them were like both. So different perspectives. From both male and female perspectives in the book. So that's differing from last month where I had 2 female, 9 male, and 6 both. So that really just varies extremely widely, and I don't really ever pay attention to that going into a book, so I really never know what that's going to end up being by the end of the month. As for the format, this month I read 7 physical books and 9 audiobooks, which is pretty balanced. Still kind of going into this month, going into April, I would really love to push up both of those. Actually, I was going to say I would be hoping to push up the physical books that I read, and then I was also thinking, well, I would also like to push up the audiobooks because I have plenty of time to listen to audiobooks at work. I just sometimes get too distracted listening to something else like music or YouTube videos or whatever, and just kind of cut down my audiobook time quite a bit. And I would love if I could in April to maybe try to give myself a month of really focusing on audiobooks. And I'm going to be trying to go to the gym every morning in April. We'll see how that goes, how it continues to go, and hopefully that'll also give me some extra hours every week to listen to stuff. And of course, I'm going to be trying to catch up on vlogs and really getting out a lot of reviews this month, hopefully, and other YouTube videos. So we'll see how doing more physical books goes, but I don't know. We'll see. We'll see how it all goes. I'm really hoping to bump up both, though, to have a better total for April. Now, most of those physical books that I read were actually ARCs, specifically ARCs that I got from publishers. One of them was technically an ARC, but I didn't get it from a publisher. So I read at least 6 review copies. It's kind of weird. I started at the beginning of the year really trying to go into this year, trying to catch up on series that I already own, things that I already own, but every single month so far this year, I've really ended up reading almost nothing but review copies of things, which is I'm going to be trying to cut back on that a little bit and read other stuff from now on. I've kind of gotten through most of the stuff that I've requested through like May. So from June on to the rest of the year, I'm going to be kind of trying to be a little bit more selective in what I request and what I read from publishers, just because I would really like to actually give myself the opportunity to read things that are on my shelf already that aren't necessarily new releases, even though I really enjoy doing the new releases all the time because I love posting reviews. I love being able to see what's like new and upcoming and all that kind of stuff, but I would really like to read some of the stuff I already have as well. So we'll see how that goes throughout the next few months. April and May still may be like that, where I read mostly review copies, but I don't know. Maybe I'll get a little bit better with it in like May or something, and then carry that hopefully into June. And we'll see. I honestly have no idea how that's going to go because there's still a lot of review copies, but it kind of just means I have to give myself more time for reading in general. This past month in March, I read 7,079 pages, which is a little bit of a bump up from last month. So even though I did read more books technically last month, I read more pages this month. February's pages was 6,919, so it kind of went down and now it's going back up. But that's really what I like to look at more, actually. More than the amount of books that I read, even though I do keep track of how many books I've read. I like looking at how many pages I've read, especially because, as you can see, it is a little bit misleading to see that I read less books this month, but I read technically more pages. I read more of stuff than I did last month, even if the actual book count is lower. So anyway, I also listened to what amounts to 138 hours of audiobooks, which is up from February, where I only listened to 90 hours of audiobooks. So that's pretty cool. I think this past month has been a pretty good month despite some of the not so great weeks of reading that I had. I really caught up a lot in the past couple of weeks, in the last couple of weeks of March. And then I also did several reviews. This past month I did 6 total reviews. I posted 6 reviews for 6 books. Some of them were carried over from February, and that's the case is still the same now. I still have some books from March that I have not reviewed yet. And there's actually one book from February that I've been meaning to post a review for and haven't yet. And a book that I read in January that I haven't posted a review for yet that I still am planning on posting a review for. So I'm a little bit behind on reviews in some cases, but also sort of on top of it, like the last book that I finished, Star's End by Cassandra Rose Clarke. I really liked that book and I really wanted to get a review up for it as soon as I could, so I did. And that made me really happy. But at the same time, as always, I would still love to be more on top of it, getting the reviews up around the release dates a little bit more than I have been. So I still have a couple of reviews to post from last month, and I'll continue to post reviews this month for books that I read, and we'll see how it goes. We'll see how much I can catch up with that. And then as for my favorites of the month, I've been doing this the past couple of months. I've been telling you what my favorites were, starting with my favorite physical book. I'm actually going to go ahead and cheat here and choose 2 books because they really go together, and that is Two Like the Lightning and 7 Surrenders by Ada Palmer. I read and reviewed both of these back to back and also did an interview with Ada Palmer, which is another thing I would love to point out. If you haven't already watched that, I would love if you went ahead and did that because it's, I think, a pretty good interview and I really enjoyed doing it. And it was a really great privilege and honor to be able to do an author interview, and I would love to do more. So definitely these 2 are my favorite. Really amazing science fiction with beautiful writing, just extremely intelligent and thought-provoking themes that you wouldn't expect it to have going into like a science fiction novel. They aren't your typical science fiction, but they do take place in a sort of far future in like several hundred years, and things in this future are really quite interesting, and she's thought about so much of what might be happening from now until then and how that would affect the world, and it's fascinating to see what she's come up with. So if you have not already thought about picking these up before, I very highly suggest you do so because they're easily 2 of my favorite books of the year so far, not let alone just March. 2 of my favorite books of the year so far, and the second book just came out, and the third book will be out in December, so you won't have long to wait if you do pick these up. And as for my favorite audiobook, a lot of the audiobooks that I read this past month were from series. The 4 of them were from one series, and 4 of them were from another series, and only really 1 stood alone. But I would say that my favorite out of all of those was Changes by Jim Butcher, one of the Dresden Files books. I think it's the 12th one, I'm pretty sure. And honestly, I've been talking about the series so much the past few months that I feel like maybe you're getting tired of me talking about it. All I really have to say is that you really need to get up to this point in this series to really see what Jim Butcher is doing I mean, this is a huge shift in the series. Some cool things happen, some really big particular things happen, and really lead on to what comes next. And it's huge. It's a really huge point in this series, and I really, really enjoyed it. Easily one of my favorites of the series so far, and just everything leading up to it, and the one book that I've read after it, they're all just fantastic. And I'm obsessed with the series, and I'm really holding off on finishing what I have left of it. I have the little book of short stories that he's written to kind of go along with it. It's called Side Jobs. And then the next two, Cold Days and Skin Job, I think those are the next two. And then I'll be out of them. So it really stinks that I'm almost done with them. I really can't wait to continue, but I'm going to have to because I don't want to run out. So if you have not picked up Dresden Files yet, I will continue to keep telling you to do so. Please do it. They're awesome. Oh, crap. I just realized I forgot genre. What were the genres of the books that I read? Well, I'm glad I didn't just end the video without talking about that. The genres that I read this month, there were 6 science fiction, 2 fantasy, 4 urban fantasy, and 4 dystopian post-apocalyptic. Those were the 4 Myra Grant books, the Newsflash series. So, and that compares to last month, I read 7 fantasy, 5 urban fiction, and some other different stuff. Like, I didn't read any science fiction last month in February, and this month was mostly science fiction. Like, this month felt like a huge month of science fiction. I'm honestly, looking back at the month, I was like, oh yeah, I did read all these other things. I did read, like, some fantasy and some of these other genres. Like, I mostly was like, wow, there's a lot of science fiction happening this month for me, and it's pretty fantastic. I really enjoyed it a lot. It was a great month to read lots of different science fiction. They're all very different from one another, but all of the science fiction I read, I really enjoyed. For the most part, I shouldn't say that because I didn't really enjoy The Stars Are Legion too much. That was probably my most disappointing read of the month, honestly. But the rest of them, I really enjoyed a lot, and I'm really glad to be reading more science fiction. So there's the genres before I end this, and I'm glad I didn't forget. So anyway, since I'm not doing a weekly wrap-up this week, and I'll be saving that for next week, I'll go ahead and take a moment to thank our Patreon producers. I really appreciate all of them for supporting Giselle and I in this way and all the channels that we have. We're in the process of revitalizing the vlog. The vlog is going to start catching up very soon again. Giselle has been, if anybody is curious, because I know she's been a little bit MIA recently, she has been reading a lot more this past week or so and plans on posting some stuff very shortly, hopefully. So, and also Patreon, our Patreon has kind of simplified a little bit and is a little bit more accessible to hopefully more people. We changed it a little bit from what it originally was set up to be. I do talk about that a bit more in vlogs that are upcoming. So if you're curious about that, then you can definitely look out for those. Basically, we just reduced some of the prices on there to something that we thought was just a little bit more accurate and better suited to us than what was originally recommended that we do. So anyway, I think that's it for today. Thank you guys so much for watching. If you wouldn't mind telling me how your March went, if you want to tell me like how many books you've been reading, how the month went for you, how you think your reading went for you this past month, I would love to know about that. It's always fun to hear about that in the comments of these videos, how people's reading months have been going. I'd love to see how that compares, and hopefully seeing people enjoying their reading and getting a lot out of it. I would love to know what your favorite books of the past month have been. Definitely share those things with me. I would love to hear them. Thank you guys so much for watching, and I will see you later with more.